the last week for CYB 380 or 380. And so just to recap before we dive in, and I do want to talk more about what we were talking about a few minutes ago, because I think that's important for everyone to know the industry and how things are going. So I may reserve some time at the end after the guided practices to talk through a lot more of that. So let's kind of recap before we dive into our guided practices for the evening. We have touched a lot of different things over the past 4 weeks, and we have looked at configuring and connecting to Ubuntu machines or Linux machines, to Windows machines, to local host, or to do a loop back to our own internal machine. We have created Apache web servers or HTTPD web servers on Linux, on Windows. We've configured IIS in Windows. We've looked at turning firewalls on and off, creating and modifying users, not only in Windows, but in Linux as well, creating groups. We've done a lot of different automation around configuring and setting up our environments. We're going to go a little deeper today. We've looked at Apache. We've looked at setting up users in Windows. We're going to go a step deeper, and we're going to set up DHCP. We're going to also look at using Ansible roles. Roles is a little different from what we have previously looked at. So roles gives us the ability to manage things at a much deeper level. You can set up roles, and those roles inside of a stack of directories can do certain tasks. And you can automate those tasks and only those tasks. So let's start off with 5.3. 5.3 is going to be looking at DHCP configurations. So we're going to look at standing up a DHCP server and at a minimum setting up the IP address and the subnet masks for connecting our systems. If you haven't already, go ahead and log into the vCastle. And the first thing it wants us to do, I'll go ahead and log into my CentOS machine. Is we're going to look at our host file. So I'm going to log in as my user. We're going to look at our Ansible host file, and we're going to ensure that the 192.168.1.3, which is the Windows web server, is assigned the entry of web server in the group. So we will go here and open. For this example, I'm going to use the terminal. You can use VS Code if you'd like, but I'm going to use the terminal for this one just to show you that back and forth. I mentioned over the past several weeks I was going to flip back and forth. This is one of those times where I'm going to flip into using the terminal just so that you see that we're comfortable using both sides. Let me know if you all can see my screen.
Good to go.
Yep. I am going to do one thing. I'm going to undock it to make it a little bit easier to read and then reshare it. That way it's a little bit larger for you. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with a question. How do I tell where I'm at in this system? Okay, we'll go through those. So pwd will give me the current directory I'm in. Anthony, you mentioned who am I? So who am I will tell me who I am, right? I'll tell you who you logged in as. Who am I? You can also extend that a little bit more and just do ID. and it will give you the user ID and the groups attached. But yeah, you all are on the right path. So PWD is always the first thing I do when I log into a system. A lot of times, PWD, if you are logging into a system straight, right out of the gate, you may see that little tilde. And 9 times out of 10, that tilde is going to be your home directory or the home directory of the user that you are logging in as. I leave that 10% because if it's set up differently in the password file or in the PASSWD file, then it will actually route you to a different place. The company I work for, we have the notion of a batch user or a service account user. That service account logs into a certain directory. It doesn't have its own designated home directory. It lives in a directory structure that the application uses. So if it were to log in, or you were to log in with it, it would show a different PWD configuration than you would see if you or I were to log in. So first thing I do is PWD to see where I'm at. And then I'll usually do an LS. Always the first two commands I make. Just quickly to see where I'm located. And then I know I need to go into my playbooks directory. I'll do it again. And I need to go into week 5. So in week 5, I need to open my host file. So I'll do vi etc ansible hosts to open that file. And we'll see that web server is the very first thing, and it's using 1.3 or 192.168.1.3. So there's not anything that we need to do here to configure that. It's already set up for us. If you're in VI, you can do a Shift:*Q to come out. If you're in Nano, you can just do a Control-X to come out. So now that I'm in my week 5 directory and I can tell where that is again, I'm going to create a new file called dhcp.yaml. So the dhcp.yaml file is going to start off just like we do most of our files with a web server. We're going to use the become keyword. We haven't used that in a while. So by doing that, we're going to need to sudo to root or elevated privileges. We're going to use a tasks. The name is going to be install iscdhcp server. We're going to be using aptitude. The name is going to be iscdhcp server. Once we've created that task, we have one other one, which is going to be copying the subnet that we're going to build. And so the subnet is going to be subnet information to target. We're going to use a template for that one. And the template's going to have a source, which is dhcp.conf.subnet. Again, that can be whatever we need it to be. I just chose to name it config.subnet. We have a destination, which is where it's going to live once we send it somewhere. And that's going to be dhcp.conf.subnet. The mode we're going to set this to is read execute, read, execute, read, execute, or RX, RX, RX. I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment. And then we have our first configuration. So let me go ahead and take a screenshot of that for you. And I will pause here. I'll also take off this configuration that blurs my screen a little bit so you can see it a little easier. Let me know when you get to that point. We'll continue on. So I'll go ahead and save this. I'm going to do a DHCP cat on that so you can see it there. All right, so let's go ahead and Ansible playbook, DHCP, syntax, check. And so if you have those created, we want to go back in and add one more task. I'm going to change the permissions on dhcpd.conf. The path to that file, etc dhcp dhcpd.conf. Mode is going to be 0 read write, read write, and read write. And then we're also going to append our subnet that we create. So we're going to use the cat command to display that, but then we're going to pipe that over to dhcpd.conf. And then the last one is going to be start dhcp. Using systemd, the state is going to be started. And the name is going to be the ISC DHCP server. So I'll pause there because that is the full listing of what we'll be doing in this exercise.
Professor, if on my screen I can't type or anything, should I restart it? Like my whole thing is broke.
Yes, if it is completely froze, restart that pod.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that. We'll run the syntax check one more time. So we've created the dhcp.yaml file. Now we need to create that other file that we were talking about, which is the configuration subnet file. All right, so we will do interface v4 equals ENS 160 subnet declaration subnet 192.168.1.0. The network mask is going to be 255 for class C. Range is going to be 192.168.1.14 to 16. We're going to do the router is going to be 1.1, and we're going to use the DNS as Google's first configuration. So I'll take a screenshot of this one.
Professor, I'm like on I guess the other step, but either way, I was trying to, I guess run the syntax and I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting an error. Like initially, were we supposed to run the playbook with the first part and then add the
You,
second part to it, or
well,
no? We're just
it's not
going
really,
by
it's
you
not
just
really adding it. It's more of just seeing if it would work properly.
okay, because I didn't run it. I did the syntax check, right? That's all you wanted, right?
Correct. Yeah, we don't need to run it just yet.
Okay, okay. I was just getting it. Then I probably just must have spelled something. Then I'll just continue looking.
No, if you give me a sec, I can log in and see.
Hmm.
Let me take a look at yours. All right, so I'm logging in.
I can open.
Name. Oh, so
Just
it's
EM. Yeah.
yep, yep. All right, let me come out of yours. Miss Thornton, I'm looking at yours now, so you may see a blip as I log in.
Thank you.
Instead of using VI, try using Nano. It might be a little bit easier for you.
Okay, thank you.
No, you're fine. I use VI. It's what I'm always in. So if I need to
Mhm.
switch over to Nano, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so what we're doing here in creating this subnet definition is we're going to append that to the dhcpd.conf file that's going to live on the Ubuntu machine. And we're going to append it to the interface ENS160. Now, we don't necessarily know that that is the interface we want to tie this to. What a administrator would need to know before they even write this rule is the interface that they are connecting to. So what we would need to do is log into that machine. Actually, sorry, wrong machine. Into the Ubuntu machine, and you can do an if config, and you want to see which address has that 192.168.1.3, and you want to look at that particular interface. We can also go look at this networks. Okay. Anyway, sorry. We will go here and we'll do this. if config. Okay. Print $1. I missed it. And I only want head and one. There we go. So the command I ran, ifconfig, to get me the full listing of all my network interfaces. Head 1 will give me the first line of that row, the first full line, which is the ENS 160. And then the awk command tells me, or allows me to print out or segregate out exactly what I want to see from that particular command. It's used in scripting languages to sort of manipulate the output of what you want to see. So now that we know it is 160, ENS 160, we can exit and come back in. And if I look at that subnet, I want to ensure that it is that interface. All right, so once we have that built, we want to run this to ensure that it works. So we will just do ansible playbook.yaml ask become. And it should run, and it should configure our build script. All right, and so if that configured successfully, we can take a screenshot of that. And then we want to go to our Ubuntu machine. So I'll clear this and I'll log back into my Ubuntu machine. And I want to run systemctl status isc dhcp server. I got a failure, which means mine is incorrect.
Don't you hate when that happens?
I do, especially when I'm recording it. I've taught this thing several hundred times now. I've done this exact same configuration, the exact same way. I didn't miss anything. What changed? Oh, that's what changed. All right, so let's stop it. Yeah. And start it again. And we're still in a failed state. I'm now debugging to see exactly what was missed. Domain name servers. The range is correct. Interface is correct. Oh. Okay, so now we fail for a different reason, but let's see why. All right, so I missed the semicolon first. Subnet 192.168.1.0. Oh, sorry. Mask. Now it's running. Let me go back to the other machine and show you exactly what needs to change. All right, so at line number 2, I missed a semicolon. And at line number 4, instead of network, it should have been net mask. And that's what you need. Actually, let me go take a screenshot of that. And that's what you would need in order for it to work. And so now, in theory, we can rerun that, but it might fail on us because of the installation. All right. So it copied and it appended. So I do need to go make sure that the appending of that file isn't going to cause any issues. Yep, so let's delete all of these. And so now we're back to normal. So once we've done that portion, next we want to log into our Windows machine. And while that's coming up, I'm going to run grab a glass of water. I'll be right back. All right, so now that that is set up, we want to,
I don't know. I think I'm still getting that error on Ubuntu.
all right. I'm logging into yours too. All right, so let's navigate to your Ubuntu. Yeah, it looks like it didn't copy it over.
So I go back.
I'm looking. Hold on one sec. Oh. Take a look at the shell command where you're doing your copy. You got etc. Here, I'll highlight it. You're missing the D before the .config.
Oh, okay.
And you can rerun that. It shouldn't cause you any issues.
Wait, oops.
Yep.
What was that
All right.
under? Oh, the
I'm looking. Hold on. I got out of there. It's in the shell portion, so it's line number 17.
I think the
Right
same
there.
thing might be happening to me.
Okay, let me go look at yours.
But you said it was line 17.
Yeah.
I think I know where it's at, maybe.
I'm looking through it.
Yeah, I see you logged in.
That one looks right though.
It does. I went back and looked at the.
So what did it fail on? No such. Oh. In your copy. That's what it was. The only reason I noticed it is if you look in the output, I'm going to highlight real quick.
Mm-hmm.
That right there.
The no such.
Yep. Right. So if you're in your Windows machine, then we want to go to our connection properties or show available networks. So I clicked on Ethernet, change adapter options. Come on. All right, so I'll get to it a different way. So we'll go to networking settings, share center, change adapter settings, and the LAN device, I'm going to right click and go to properties. We're going to select IPv4, and you'll notice that we have these pre-populated. I'm going to take a screenshot of these because we're going to need to set these back afterwards. We're going to set it to obtain automatically and DNS resolution to automatic. Before I do that, I'm going to open command line and I'm going to do an IP config. So you'll see that we are running 192.168.1.2. We'll do a set DNS and then we will renew.
Professor,
Yep,
I'm on the step where you have to create the subnet. How do I do that in Nana?
in Nano.
Yeah.
So in Nano, I'm logging into yours.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna hit the up arrow and I'm gonna put Nano in front of that.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so I'm hitting an issue here. So I'm gonna do a release. And renew. I'm still capturing local network. It's taking it a moment this time. There we go. Now it pulled the correct one. And so if we take that information, so we see that it did in fact grab an IP address from our Linux machine. So let's go back and take a look at that one. If I go into here, and in my Ubuntu machine, if I and I'm in my Ubuntu machine through my my CentOS machine. If we look at var lib dhcp leases, you'll see we have a lease, and it's a Microsoft lease. So you can use the lease command to see that you have information already assigned, or that the DHCP is set up and configured properly. I'll copy that and paste it. So once we have our DHCP up and running and we're able to get IP addresses, we now want to tear that thing down and bring it back to factory settings, or at least default settings to what we were using. Server. And so I'm using sudo apt or aptitude purge isc dhcp-server and then -y. The -y is to force the yes flag if it asks for any sort of acceptance. And so this is just going to completely remove any and all pieces of that DHCP server. Once that's done, we also want to do a sudo rm -r for etc dhcp and sudo rm var lib dhcp. So that removes any and all information from this server stating that it had DHCP installed on it. We'll take a screenshot of that as well. Now that we've got that finished, we need to go back and set our Windows machine back to what it was. So I'll share that screen. And if you are in your Windows machine, you can open the properties for that LAN device, go back into IPv4, and we're going to switch this to 192.168.1.2. No gateway, and our DNS is going to be loopback. And if you're curious of what that is, I pasted that in chat a few moments ago, which was the original configuration of what we had. And so now I will do a renew just to get that IP address again. And we're back to where we were. So that's a quick down and dirty way of configuring DHCP at the Linux level and having it display out to other machines. Any questions on 5.3?
I have a question. I'm getting the error when I try to run the playbook for the subnets.
Okay. Let's take a look. I'm gonna open your playbook. Right, so it's saying it cannot find dhcp.conf. And that's it's right here at line 14. You're missing a D there.
Thank you.
Yep, no worries. All right, any questions on any of that so far?
Not so far. Just catching up.
All right, let's take a few minutes then. Let's take about 10, maybe let's take about 15 to let everyone catch up. And the 15-minute break, when we get back, we'll finish out 5.4, which is setting up the roles in Ansible. And that's really relatively short in nature. Once we're finished with that one, I do want to show a quick example of Terraform. And that's something that I mentioned in week 1 that I kind of wanted to talk through and cover, because not only can you use Ansible, Terraform is another type of automation tool set that allows you to build and tear down environments relatively quickly. So I kind of wanted to show you that as well. So let's take about 15 minutes. When you get back, we will finish out 5.4, and then I'll finish out with showing you Terraform.
Sounds good.
All right, so 6:50, be back around 7:05.
Sir, are you available?
Give me 1 second. Just reconfiguring the environment so I can show it to you. Yes, sir. What can I do for you?
Can you take a look at mine? So I'm on. I'm following. Well, I was trying to follow along. I tied up with the baby, and I got a little behind. And I'm on the step where you run the DHCP.yml file. After you do the DHCP.config.subnet,
Mm-hmm.
and I am getting errors. I thought I can try to fix it. I had changed a lot of stuff that I missed, but it's still not working.
Let me see. Couldn't find. Oh, check the name of that file.
Yeah, wait.
Yep.
Oh man, I feel like
Trust me, it happens. I would not worry about that.
that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
It's almost always something simple.
Yep.
Right, it's just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, one more. What else? All right, so one thing you'll notice at line number 4, that needs to be net mask instead.
Oh, I see. I don't know how I kept skipping over that.
No,
That
you're good. I missed it in the first time.
I think that was like my brain doing that automatically.
It removed the W. Now go back and look at the dhcp.yaml file. ep.conf. Okay. It's in the append section.
Customer service. Customer service.
DCDHCP. Try rerunning that one more time. See what it does. All right, so in the copy.
It's weird.
Oh, look at line number 10.
Good line number 10. That's
You're missing a DHCP /.
am I?
Yep.
Oh. Okay. Then the DC. Okay. All right. Hey.
There you go.
Jason.
Yep.
Sir, what did you do to get the ISC DHCP server to stop failing?
All right, is everyone back?
Real quick, sir, before you begin, what did you do to get the DHCP server to stop failing on the
Ooh,
Ubuntu?
yeah, let me take a look at yours. There was several things I had to make a modification to. One, I added a semicolon after the interface v4, and the other one was the net mask. So let's do this. And then DHCP D. Give that a shot. Do a stop and start on it.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, so let's do this. Systemctl stop CP server, and then do a start and a status. We're still failing. So this is I'm just triaging at this point, seeing what I might have missed. PD, CLNF. All right, so interface 4, subnet, net mask, range, option routers. There we go. So it was a couple of things. Uh, this needed to have an S in it instead of just router. You had already made the net mask change, and you had already made the semicolon change there. So it was really just an S at the end of router. Does that make sense?
Kinda. I'm gonna just try it.
Let me show you on my screen here. So if I look at dhcp.conf.subnet, you had just router instead of routers.
Oh, please. Okay. Let me I gotta lock in.
Yep, give that a shot.
It's I don't understand how I keep missing those little ones. It's running, but
It's probably, did it mess up?
it says it's active, right? But
Yep.
it's red in there.
Let's see. I think it was red earlier when I saw it. Let's see. Yep, you're fine.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Just making sure. Thank you.
Yep. That's basically saying that the interface 192 has a second or a separate segment on it that you don't need.
Okay. I appreciate you. You are a
Yep.
rock star.
All right, so let's go ahead and we'll dive into 5.4. 5.4 is looking at creating a roles section. And under the roles section, and I'll create it in a second and show you kind of what I'm talking about. It allows you to see defaults, and you can establish templates or tasks or any sort of variables from environment to environment. You can make those simple, quick modifications. And it makes it easier when you're working in multiple environments. You can make small tweaks and deploy those relatively easily across multiple deployment sets or across multiple deployments themselves. So what we'll do to start off is we will start off by adding in the roles section, which is not installed by default when you install Ansible. Ansible Galaxy. Galaxy is that catalog that we want to look at. We'll do init, and then we'll say home, your user, Ansible. Actually, sorry. We're going to do playbook. No, we'll do Ansible. Ansible roles Apache. And we're going to say offline. So that's going to create a new directory structure called Ansible roles Apache. If we were to go look at that, I will open VS Code. And under VS Code, I'll open up a new folder structure called Ansible. Yes, we'll trust it. And under Ansible, you'll see roles and Apache. You'll also see a manifest file that tells you what it should look like and how it works. You'll see a series of defaults that are already created for us. Now I can just as easily go back into my activities to here, and I want to do a tree command on what was just created. A tree command just gives you a listing down to the file level of what is inside of that directory tree. We'll take a screenshot of that. And so we're going to navigate into our tasks section here. I'm not going to do it from here. I'll do it from VS Code. So in VS Code, under our tasks section, I'm going to click new file. And I'm going to call this install.yml. And we're going to install. Name is install Apache web server. We're going to use aptitude. Apache 2. State is latest. And so we will have our Apache install under task. And we're going to create another one under tasks called service. And so service is just going to start the Apache web server. Apache 2 state is started and enabled is true. So we've got two files. We've got the install file. I'll take a screenshot of that one. And we have our service file. The two that we just created, the install and the service.yaml file, are two add-on scripts or playbooks that we would like to run whenever someone were to run a role for Apache. By default, we always want the tasks to install and start that service. So once those two are created, I'll drag this over so you can see them both. We want to modify a third one. The third one is this install here. And I've got all three of them. Sorry, not install. Main. I've got all three of them shown so you can see the sort of progression. We created two new files, install and service. The main file was already there. And so we want to create two entries in this file called import tasks. It's going to be install.yaml and import tasks service.yaml. And so it takes these two files that we created and imports their file into the main tasks run or build properties, which allows us to run that playbook. So I'll go back here and you'll see we have all three of them under tasks. And if we were to run this playbook, we would see that the main file will call on or will utilize the install and the service. All right, and so the next section, or the last section that we want to run, is a run setup file. And so the run setup file is the file that's needed to completely run this playbook from beginning to end. And so that starts at the roll Apache level right here. We right click and say new file. We have run setup.yaml. And so that particular file web server becomes true, and the roles that we want to run are going to be Apache. And so he will be at the roles level. So I'll do a pwd to see where I'm at. I want to be in my Ansible folder. So I'm in my home S. McLean Ansible folder. I'm going to do a tree again. And we're going to see that under our tree, which is under Ansible, you'll have a roles folder. Under the roles folder, you'll have a run setup.yml. That run setup file is configured to run on the web server and is configured to run the Apache role, which is right here. The Apache role has a series of tasks created for it. Those tasks are main, install, and service. Main is the driver for the install and the service configuration. So I'm going to take a screenshot of all of these. Paste that in chat for you. Give me 1 second. So once we've gotten all of those built, we're going to run the syntax check. And this will run through and verify that it can, in fact, run that playbook. And so the very last thing that we want to do is ask become pass. And it's going to run through the playbooks. It'll connect into our Ubuntu machine. And I hit an issue value of state must be fixed, present, or latest. Oh, I mistyped it. All right, so once that's configured, you should see it run smoothly. Right, so that is how you would set up a role setting. You can download the Apache role. You can configure the setup to run Apache. You can set up the main driver or tasks list for that. And then from there, you can install and configure the services setting. All right. Any questions on 5.4?
Just still catching up, that's all.
Okay, no worries. I'll pause here for a few minutes and let everyone catch up.
Yeah, I'm actually probably way behind, but I just can't find it in my folder for some reason when I type that in.
Okay.
For the I'm talking about like the very first step.
No, you're good. Let me log in and see. Hold on.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Right. It's just I don't see it on the left side of the workspace.
Right, I had to import it, so
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yep.
Sitting there playing with things left and right.
There you go.
How did you do that again?
Yep. So you right click
Okay.
and go to add folder to workspace.
Okay, too easy.
And you pick which one you want and then select it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. So we'll wait a few minutes. We'll give it about 5 to 7, and then I kind of want to show you the Terraform scripts. All right, is everyone caught up?
Almost.
All right.
For the most part. Still got a couple more to configure.
All right, is everyone still with me so far?
Yeah, still here.
All right, let me share my screen real quick. So I mentioned I wanted to talk a little bit about Terraform. And so kind of to give you a little brief understanding of what we've kind of been working on up to this point is Ansible. We've looked at how Ansible is an automation platform to do a series of tasks. And there are others out there, one of which is Terraform. So I wanted to go through and show you a little bit about Terraform and why it sort of is an important tool set to use. So I'm going to switch over. This is my work laptop, by the way. So what you're seeing here is what I would use in order to build out a system. All right, so we'll start off with, let me just share the whole screen so you'll see more of what I'm talking about. In the very beginning, you have to set up a series of accounts, one of which is a sandpit account. This is just me configuring it. So I'll capture some variables that I need so that I can interact with this environment. I'll paste those in. All right, so now that I've pasted those in, I now have access to work with that particular environment structure. And I will go ahead and pop into that one as well. All right, so on the left-hand side, under Terraform, you see a series of files and folders. I'm going to start off, and I'm only going to go through probably the first 6. And the reason for that is anything after the 6th one, gets cumbersome and it takes a little bit longer to build. The first 6 take about 10 minutes or so. From 7 farther down take about 15 minutes overall. So overall, beginning 0 to 21 takes about 30 minutes to build an entire infrastructure. So what is this actually doing? So 0 is the first thing that it runs. It's a series of local build environment structure. It's a values file that you can utilize to configure your environment. You'll notice the line that I have highlighted is environment. Environment is called testing-lab. And I can set a series of parameters or a series of variables that I want to use in this script. Next is the series of providers. I'm using AWS, so I've configured these providers to be AWS centric. For an AWS environment, you always have to configure, just like you would a standard network, a VPC, a virtual private cloud. And so that is our second section. Here is our VPC. In our VPC, we specify a CIDR range, DNS support, and any tags that we want to add in. We have an internet gateway so we can connect out to the internet. We set up a series of subnets that allow our cluster and our VPC to talk to different things within inside of itself. We set up a NAT, or network address translation, so that our zones and our gateway can traverse each other and talk. And then we configure our routes so that we can at least connect out to the internet when necessary. And then 7 through 21 is around EKS. EKS is a tool set or a orchestration engine that allows you to run virtual machines, or they call them pods or deployments, inside of a Kubernetes cluster, EKS, or Elastic Kubernetes Service from AWS. It's Amazon's Kubernetes control plane. It allows me as a developer or me as an engineer to configure a control plane for Kubernetes, which is the overall architecture, the overall virtual machine platform. Think of it as vSphere or Hyper-V if you're working in a Windows environment. It allows me to configure different pods or nodes or virtual machines to run on. And then you can set up different nodes, which is number 8. And then 9 through, I believe, 14 are setting up different configurations inside of that cluster so that I can do different things. 11 is the Helm provider, or an actual package manager. Metrics server is number 12, which gives me a list of metrics once it's installed. 13 is looking at all the virtual machines and doing some sort of analysis on them. 14 is a autoscaler. What does that mean? Essentially, if every one of you were to access google.com and Google had, let's just say, 2 virtual machines running to handle that load, as soon as the load increases or spikes, another autoscaler would kick off and spin up 1, 2, 3, 10 more environments in order to handle that load. Once the environments or the load has subsided or ratcheted down to a manageable number, those particular instances or nodes that it spun up would be killed off or would reduce back down to a normal rate. All of that's handled using the application load balancer controller, or AWS controller, for ingress. As an example, if you go to Amazon.com, you're hitting an AWS load balancer. That load balancer says, okay, you are in the US region, you're in the eastern region of the US, so you're going to route to this set of containers, as opposed to if you're on the West Coast, you're going to route to a separate set of containers. And so that's what all of this is doing, is configuring all that information. I'm actually going to take out these because I don't want these to run. So I'll just move those. I'll just delete those entirely. And so we have our first 6, our local, our providers, our VPC, our gateway, our subnets, and our routes. Terraform is a statefully managed system, unlike Ansible, where if I run it once, I can run it 100 times, and it does not know where it last left off. Terraform is a little different. With Terraform, I'm going to delete this directory. With Terraform, you can run, or you have to run, Terraform init. And the initialization of this environment will install that .terraform file or folder and all of the executables needed to run this environment. Once you build this environment, you can run Terraform plan to see exactly what it's going to build. And so it will build a plan file for me. And I can see that I'm going to be building 14 objects. And it will give me a listing of what those objects actually are. Now this one may fail because I've run this several times for other instances. So once you run your plan, you can run your apply. The apply is no different than the plan, only it will prompt you if you want to continue and actually apply your changes. If I say yes, which I'm going to, I'll say yes, and it will start its configuration. First thing it does is reconcile what hasn't been done, and it will go out and it creates all of its little bits and pieces. And so we'll wait a second on this to finish. And that gateway may take a few moments. Let's say all this is finished. It's done. We verified it. One interesting or good thing about Terraform, which is a little different than Ansible, is once I've made these changes, I can upload this terraform.state file, and it's not going to let me open it. The state file, the lock file, and the HCL lock file. I can upload those to let's say, a GitHub repository or a Harvest or Endeavor, whatever your source control system is. You can upload those to that system. It can be a network file share. It's however you want to configure it. And whomever comes in behind me to run these scripts, they can rerun this Terraform apply, and it will validate that some of these have already been done and doesn't need to do them again. So you notice it just finished the creation. So if I go back to my console, I can click on this VPC here. And remember, it was called Testing Lab. So I go into my VPC. It created Testing Lab. Let's say we're finished with this build out, we're done, and we want to completely destroy everything we just created. I can run terraform destroy. And it's going to prompt me again. And it's going to say 14 are going to be destroyed. I'll say yes, and I'm going to go back over to here, and I want you to see what happens. So we have 4 currently. And as it gets finished, and that gateway might take a few minutes. Once it finishes, it will completely delete this entire VPC or cloud. Let's see, there it went. It's gone. It's a quick way to build out a cloud infrastructure or configure a cloud infrastructure without having to do any sort of heavy lifting or manual lifting. You set it one time and you run these scripts on whatever environment or whatever account you want to run this on, and it builds them for you. The account you just saw that I used is the Sandpit account. However, if I were to run this in any other AWS account, or it really doesn't even have to be AWS, as long as the configurations are the same, you can run a Terraform script in Oracle or Azure or Google Cloud, any of the major uh, cloud providers. You can run Terraform as long as the provider or the configuration that you are running adheres to the standards of that provider. All right, so does that make sense to kind of what I was talking about? So a lot of what I do, going back to the previous conversation before we started class, what I do on a daily basis is I'll take these scripts that I've built or that my team has worked on, and we will deploy them to an environment and we'll test them. And once they're tested and validated, we will check them back into our source code repository, and any new client or any update that has to happen to that client, we run these scripts or make these changes, and it auto populates and auto provisions those changes to that client. I'll give you another example. There's another tool that we use. It's called Argo CD, Argo Continuous Delivery. One interesting thing about Argo CD is it is completely cloud native. It uses Kubernetes as its base or as its basis of operation. And I will go in here and change my project to baseline. What you see here are 3 application sets. We have development 2021, QA 2021, and a baseline maintenance QA 5.2. These are just arbitrary pieces of information for you. They don't mean a whole lot unless you know the architecture of the system. But what you can take from it is, let's just use the first one in the middle here, QA 2021. This environment has a series of pods or virtual machines underneath it. And you'll see all of them to the right-hand side here. Let's make it a little easier to see. We have all these services that were created and all of these virtual machines that were built. That one application houses all of these virtual machines. Now you'll notice the help application has 2 virtual machines and the self-service portal has 2 machines. What those are doing is actually load balancing across. If you were to log into our application and you needed to hit a help file or a help instance, then if there's too much load on the first one, it will actually route you to the second one. And all that's handled within inside of that Terraform script that I showed you and the configuration of the resources that the Terraform script built using that load balancer controller. One interesting thing about Argo CD, and I'll turn it over to questions, is in Argo CD, you set up an application and a path. So the path that you would be connecting to would be this one here. Long story short, what happens is anytime me or any of my colleagues push a change, a defect correction to this GitHub repository branch, Argo CD checks that branch, looks at the current YAML file that it has on file, and reconciles that to what was put into the repository. If it's the same, it won't do anything. If it's different, it assumes you made a change and do want to deploy that change. So it actually does a reconciliation where it tears down the current version and applies the new version automatically. That keeps us in sync with all of our source code. That is actually a principle called GitOps or Git operations, where all code, including infrastructure, is a part of your source code repository. So at any point in time, if a malicious person comes in to do something nefarious in nature, they can completely wipe out my environment. You can have anything you want in terms of my QA environment or my development environment. I can spin up a new one with the same information, same source, same everything in a matter of 30 minutes to an hour, with very little code loss, if any. And the only code loss is any downtime that happened between the time that the attacker got in and I had to do a restore point on the database itself. All right, any questions?
How long did it take you to get as proficient as you are?
I've been doing this for quite a long time. To get proficient at Kubernetes and Terraform, which is what I just showed you a few minutes ago, about a year to get fully comfortable with it. But to pick it up and actually start developing in it, about 3 months to get proficient in Terraform and YAML. But to get to the level of DevOps that I'm at and what I do currently, it's taken my entire career. I've built on top of hardware installation and network configurations and software development and troubleshooting over the years that's just compounded into making me a different type of developer. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. I can tell it's going to take a long time.
Not necessarily. We had so we have a position like I mentioned that the position that we're hiring for, and even the internships. The reason we're doing that is we have a boot camp. So what I just showed you a second ago with the Terraform script, that wasn't built by accident, and that wasn't shown to you by accident. The reason I built it and the reason it was configured is, let's say we have 5 new employees come on board and we want to have you catch up to where we are in a relatively short amount of time and feel comfortable, right? That particular set of Terraform scripts, along with a set of labs that I've created, will help guide you through and build you from, let's just say, a DevOps level 1 engineer all the way up to a DevOps level 6 engineer, which is about where me and a couple others would be considered. So we're trying to take into consideration that entry level and how we move people through those stages. And it's really at their own pace. It's a good question. How many people did I scare?
It's like you said, how do you eat an elephant? You just got to do it one bit at a
Yep.
time.
And I still have pitfalls every single day. I've been fighting an issue that I cannot figure out. And it's something that I anyone who's been doing development or configuration for any length of time should be able to figure out. We have an SFTP server that we built, and we set up a network load balancer in front of it with a DNS or a CNAME record so that it does a DNS resolution. You would think it no brainer. Give them a username, password, should work just fine. However, we added a access policy to that load balancer. That access policy is causing the load balancer to do, let's just say, squirrely things. Where if I'm inside the VPN of our corporate network, I can access it. If I'm sitting at my desk in the Columbia office, which is running through the same Zscaler firewalls, I can't hit it. The gentleman who set it up, who works out of the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania office, he can hit it when he's on VPN in the office. But if he's not on VPN, he can't hit it. If he does his hotspot on his cell phone and adds his public IP address to the access group, it works. But then we'll tear this thing down and rebuild it, because in Terraform, like you saw, we can do it relatively quickly. We'll try it again, and the complete opposite will happen. I can't connect on VPN, but I can connect in the office, and he's the opposite. It's the oddest thing in the world. We cannot figure out the routing of what's going on and why it's causing so much of an issue.
Yeah, that one sounds very strange.
Yeah, in a world where you would think automation and source code is as ones and zeros as you can get, it's not. It's like you'll make one small configuration change and it just flips it on its head. All right, so I want to pause here, and before I I kind of do my finishing portions, I want to thank everybody for everything you've done over the past several weeks. Thank you for sticking with me. This is a fast-paced course. This course is, in some ways or in a lot of ways, can be very dry, and it can be very tedious at times. You've all seen that in a lot of ways. I hope at some point I gave you a little bit of information that you can take away from it and say, oh, well, I understand why he did what he did here, or I understand what was going on in this sort of scenario. Don't take the course as a whole and think, well, I didn't get everything I wanted out of it. I want you to take bits and pieces of it and try and apply it to just critical thinking, because that's really where you'll get the most out of it. Does anyone have any questions on anything we've covered over the past several weeks?
No, I think that's like a good point to remember. It's like the wealth of information, in such a short time is hard to process, but figuring out, your inputs, what they kind of do, what to look for. I think those are the key concepts.
Yep. Well, I'm going to be here for a little bit longer tonight. Again, I'm going to be here on Thursday too, so I'm not going to not be here Thursday. If you have any issues or questions or anything that comes up from today, tomorrow, all the way up till the last day of class, don't hesitate to reach out. If I can't get back to you quickly, I do my best to try and check my IMs or at least my team's messages at least 2 to 3 times a day. It comes to my phone generally, or it comes to my work laptop, which uses Teams as well. I try to check those at least 2 to 3 times a day. If something comes up, don't hesitate to reach out. You also have my email address. I put it in chat. I will put it in there again, just so that it's at the bottom. Don't forget about your resumes. If you want to send me one, I'd be more than happy to pass it forward and see what we can do. If we don't have something or it doesn't work out for us, I can definitely make sure that Zachary or the AD here in Columbia sees it and can help push it forward somewhere. All right. So I will go ahead and stop the recording for now, and I'll post that to the class and to YouTube here shortly. And I'm going to be on probably till around 9:30 or so. If if you've completed your work for the evening, or if you've worked through everything, you're more than welcome to head out. And if you've completed everything and you do not need to be here on Thursday, I'd at least like to talk to you, just to, wish you well and give you my information again. But if you've got pressing things that you can't make it, I'm not worried about that. Just shoot me a message and tell me, hey, I'm not going to make it. And then I'll make sure that I've got you logged in for your attendance. And then if you need to reach out for any course, not just this one, don't hesitate. Be more than happy to help in any way, shape, or form.
No, greatly appreciated. It's made me much more comfortable with Linux for sure, this class.
Yep. And that's one of the things that I never, when I first started teaching this class, I didn't understand or didn't realize the level of depth that was needed for this course for Linux. As I dove into it a little deeper in preparing for it, at least the first time I taught this, I kind of started peeling the onion layers back and saw that 100% of it was in Linux. And I've even told people above me, so my AD and my the director and so on and so forth, when we have our quarterly meetings, I've always made the comment about this particular course and how it needs to have at least a Linux prerequisite and potentially a second Linux prerequisite, just because of the sheer nature of what we do in the course. All right, well, I will go ahead and stop recording.